Does true love still exist? Ryan Cole, a 34-year-old billionaire, stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse apartment, staring at the city lights below. He held a glass of red wine loosely in his fingers, but he hadn't taken a sip in 20 minutes. The view was stunning, the kind of view people dreamed about. But Ryan felt nothing. He set the glass down on the marble counter and exhaled slowly. Money can't buy this, he whispered to himself. Not this, not the real thing. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, please take a second to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. If you are in the US, type US. If you are in the UK, type UK. Australia, type AUS. Norway, type Norway. Switzerland, type Switzerland. Denmark. Type Denmark. Canada, type Canada. We love knowing where our family is watching from all around the world. Now let's get into this story. For years, Ryan had tried. He had dated women who wore designer dresses and spoke in soft, careful voices around him. Women who laughed at every joke he made, agreed with every opinion he shared, and disappeared the moment they realized he wasn't going to hand over a credit card or a ring within the first 3 months. They never asked how he was feeling. They never asked what kept him up at night. They saw the penthouse, the car, the business empire, and they saw a transaction waiting to happen. Ryan was tired. He sat on the couch and rubbed his face with both hands. That evening, his closest friend and personal legal advisor, Marcus, stopped by unannounced. Marcus had known Ryan since they were teenage boys in the same neighborhood, back before the money, back when Ryan was just a skinny kid with big ideas and a second-hand laptop. Marcus knocked twice and let himself in with the spare key he had held for a decade. He took one look at Ryan's face and dropped onto the couch beside him. "You look terrible," Marcus said. Ryan laughed despite himself. "Thanks, I feel worse." Marcus picked up the untouched wine glass and handed it back to Ryan. "Talk." Ryan leaned forward, elbows on knees, voice low and honest. "Marcus, I am done with this. Every person I meet sees the money first. Every single one. I want someone real. Someone who looks at me and sees a man. Not an account balance, not a lifestyle upgrade, just a man." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "So what are you going to do about it?" Ryan looked up, and something shifted in his eyes. A spark. The same spark Marcus had seen years ago when Ryan was pitching ideas from a folding table in a rented room. "I'm about to open the biggest financial institution this city has ever seen," Ryan said. "Crown Point Bank, state-of-the-art, full service, every department fully staffed. I have been planning it for months." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm not going in as the owner." Marcus blinked. "I am going in as a janitor," Ryan said. "A cleaner. New name, plain uniform. No one will know who I am. I want to see how people behave when they think I am nobody. I want to see who has a real heart in that building." Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "You are serious, completely." "I will apply through the regular hiring process, just like anyone else. You handle the public-facing side. Tell the press the owner is traveling internationally and will not be present at the opening. That gives me cover." Marcus shook his head, half laughing. "And your new name?" Ryan smiled. "Daniel. Just Daniel the cleaner." Marcus leaned back and looked at the ceiling. "You know this could either be the best decision you have ever made or the most humbling experience of your life." "Maybe both," Ryan said. Marcus raised his glass. "Then I am in. Do not get fired on the first day." They laughed, and for the first time in months, the penthouse felt a little less empty. The morning of Crown Point Bank's grand opening arrived with the kind of energy that fills a city block. News vans were parked outside. A banner stretched above the entrance. Staff members arrived in sharp uniforms, polished shoes, identification badges clipped neatly to their lapels. The lobby gleamed. The marble floors caught the morning light like something from a magazine shoot. Marcus, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, stood at the center of the lobby and addressed the assembled staff with calm authority. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the opening of Crown Point Bank, the most advanced financial institution in this city. The owner is currently overseas on urgent business matters, but he has full confidence in each of you. You were selected because you are the best at what you do. This institution will be run with integrity, professionalism, and excellence. The owner expects nothing less from any department at any level. The staff applauded. Some looked around at the grand interior with wide eyes. Others straightened their backs, already feeling important just from standing inside the building. Near the back of the room, among the small group of janitorial staff, stood Ryan, now going by Daniel. He wore a grey uniform with his name stitched above the left pocket. He held a mop handle loosely in one hand and watched the room with quiet, careful eyes. One of the senior tellers, a sharp-featured woman named Vanessa, glanced over at the cleaners and leaned toward her colleague. "Can you imagine spending your life mopping floors in a building like this?" She said it quietly, but not quietly enough. Some people really do set the bar on the ground. Her colleague, a woman named Chloe, stifled a laugh. Ryan heard every word. He said nothing. He filed it away. An older man standing beside Ryan, a weathered cleaner named George who had worked in office buildings for nearly 30 years, nudged him gently. "First day?" Ryan nodded. George kept his eyes forward. "Do not take it personally when they talk down to you. Some of them have been here one morning and already think they built the place. Just do your work and keep your eyes open. You learn a lot about people when you are holding a mop." Ryan looked at him. "Thank you, George. I will remember that." As the morning progressed, the various departments found their rhythm. The managers huddled in conference rooms going over protocols. The tellers at their stations tested systems and updated credentials, and the cleaning staff moved quietly through the corridors, wiping, mopping, polishing. Vanessa, who had been assigned as lead teller, walked through the main hall and stopped sharply when she nearly walked into Ryan, who was mopping the floor near the entrance. "Watch it," she snapped, stepping back and looking down at the wet tiles with irritation. "Can you not see where you're going, or do I need to draw you a map?" Ryan stepped aside immediately. "I am sorry," he said calmly. "I will put the sign up right away." Vanessa huffed and continued walking, muttering under her breath about standard slipping. Behind her, two younger tellers laughed softly. Ryan continued mopping, his jaw tight, his expression steady. At lunchtime, the cafeteria had an unspoken geography. Managers took the large center tables by the windows. Tellers clustered in groups near the food station. Cleaners sat at a corner table near the back, separate and quiet. With slightly less comfortable chairs and a view of the service corridor. Ryan sat with George and two other members of the cleaning staff. He ate slowly and listened. A few tables over, he could hear Vanessa and her group of tellers talking loudly about their qualifications, their salaries, their plans to move into management within a year. One of them, a young man named Derek, gestured toward the cleaner's corner without even turning around. "I do not understand why they even eat in the same cafeteria," Derek said with a smirk. "Should there not be a separate room or something?" His table laughed. George, who had heard it perfectly, kept eating without looking up. He said quietly to Ryan, "You get used to it, or you do not. Either way, the floor still needs mopping." Ryan put his fork down slowly. "What keeps you going?" he asked George. "After all these years of being treated like this." George thought for a moment, then said, "My wife tells me every morning before I leave the house, George, be good to people today. So I try. And sometimes, in between all the noise and the nonsense, you meet someone who makes it worth it. Someone kind. That is what I watch for." Ryan was quiet for the rest of lunch. That evening, he slipped into a small back office where Marcus was waiting. Marcus had his jacket off and his sleeves rolled up, a legal pad covered in notes on the desk beside him. He looked up when Ryan came in. "So, assess." Ryan sat down heavily and exhaled. "Marcus, I have never in my adult life felt invisible. Not like that. These people walk past the cleaning staff like they are furniture. Not like people at all. They make comments. They laugh. They act like choosing a different job title makes them a different class of human being." Marcus leaned back. "Hard to watch, hard to experience. There is a difference." Marcus nodded. "Anyone stand out? For better or worse," Ryan thought. "There is a woman, Vanessa. She is going to be a problem. She has a look on her face like she was personally offended by the existence of anyone below her pay grade." Marcus wrote the name down. "And on the other side?" Ryan paused. "George, one of the older cleaners. He has been treated badly for years and he still talks about being kind. He still shows up every morning and does his work with dignity." Marcus looked at him carefully. That is the kind of thing you came here to find. Ryan nodded slowly. Yeah, it is. But I am still looking for more. The next morning came in hard. The city was loud and the heat had started building early. Inside Crown Point Bank, the rhythm was already established. The tellers settled into their superiority. The managers settled into their schedules. And the cleaners settled into invisibility. Ryan arrived before 6, the way George had taught him. In the early hours, the building was peaceful. Just the sound of the mop moving across marble and the distant hum of the ventilation system. He liked it. It was the only part of the day that felt honest. By 9, Vanessa had already managed to make 3 different members of staff feel small. She sent back a cup of coffee from the cafeteria because it was not hot enough, blaming the kitchen staff as though they had personally insulted her. She complained loudly about the elevator being slow. And when Ryan mopped near her station and accidentally let the mop handle tap the edge of her desk, she turned around with a look that could have stripped paint. That is expensive equipment, she said flatly. If you cannot control your tools, you should not be in this part of the building. Ryan apologized and moved on. George found him in the corridor 10 minutes later and handed him a small wrapped biscuit from his pocket. From home, George said simply. My wife makes them. You look like you need it. Ryan took it. Thank you, George. Just keep going, the old man said, patting him once on the shoulder before disappearing around the corner. Now let us talk about Grace. In the same city, not far from the gleaming towers where Crown Point Bank had just opened its doors, there lived a young woman named Grace O.C. Grace was 29 years old. She was a single mother. Her father, a quiet widower named Edwin, had raised her entirely on his own after her mother passed away when Grace was only 6 years old. Edwin sold vegetables at the market and did small electrical repair jobs in the evenings. He was not rich, he was never rich, but he was present. Every school morning, he made sure Grace had a packed lunch. Every report card day, he sat across from her teacher with full attention and quiet pride. When Grace said she wanted to study finance, Edwin nodded and said, "Then we will find a way." They found a way. Slowly, carefully, painfully. Grace worked part-time through her university years. She cleaned offices on weekends, tutored secondary school students in the evenings, and studied every spare hour she could find. She graduated with honors. Then something happened that changed the shape of her life. In her final year of university, someone she trusted, a man she had believed cared for her, took advantage of her. He disappeared before she even knew she was pregnant. Her classmates whispered. Some of her lecturers looked at her differently. A few people told her outright that she should walk away from her degree, that a baby and a finance career could not exist in the same life. Grace held her chin up and kept going. She sat her final exams with a visible pregnancy. She walked across the stage at graduation, holding her certificate in one hand and a photograph of her newborn daughter in the other. Her father stood in the crowd and cried without shame. Her daughter's name was Lily. She was the most important thing in the world. Years passed. Grace built a quiet life. She applied for finance jobs steadily and was rejected more times than she could count. Gaps in employment history, lack of corporate experience, overqualified for entry level, underqualified for senior positions. The rejections were polite and hollow and relentless. Then one evening, she came home and found her father sitting at the kitchen table with a newspaper open in front of him. "Grace," he said, pushing it toward her. "Read this." She sat down and read. Crown Point Bank, brand new, full service, hiring across all departments, including, buried at the bottom of the column, an accountant position. Grace looked up at her father. Edwin smiled. "Go." She printed her CV that night on their neighbor's printer. She ironed her dress twice. She set 2 alarms. She made Lily's breakfast the night before, so the morning would be smooth. Fortunately, she left the house at 7:15, walking because the bus was not running on time. CV in a neat brown envelope held against her chest. By the time she reached Crown Point Bank, the queue outside had already moved inside. She walked through the entrance doors, slightly breathless, a thin line of perspiration at her temple. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "I am here for the accountant position," Grace said, smoothing her dress. The receptionist's expression shifted. "I am sorry. That position was just filled. About 15 minutes ago." Grace went completely still. 15 minutes? I am sorry. We had a high number of strong applicants. The position is gone. Grace nodded mechanically. Okay, thank you. She walked back through the doors. She sat down on the low wall outside the bank entrance and stared at the pavement. 15 minutes. If the bus had come on time. If she had left at 7 instead of 7:15. If any one of 100 small things had been different. She pressed her hand flat against her stomach and breathed. She heard footsteps. Someone sat down near her. Not too close, just close enough. She looked up. It was an older man in a grey cleaner's uniform. He had a kind face, the kind that has been weathered by years of honest living. You all right? He asked. She shook her head slowly. I missed it. The job. I was 15 minutes late. George looked at her for a long moment. What job were you going for? Accountant. He raised his eyebrows. And you were qualified. I graduated with honors, she said. Not with pride, just with the flat fact of it. I have been trying to break into finance for years. This was my best chance in a long time. George nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know, they are still hiring cleaners. Grace looked at him. I am not saying it is what you studied for, he said carefully. But you would be inside. Sometimes being inside is the start. Grace looked at the bank entrance for a long moment. Then something hardened in her expression. Not bitterness, determination. She stood up. She smoothed her dress again. She walked back inside. The admin officer at the front desk looked surprised to see her return. Excuse me, Grace said. I know the accountant role is taken, but I would like to apply for a cleaning position if one is available. I will do whatever is needed. I am a hard worker. I am reliable, and I will not let you down. The admin officer looked at her CV, still in Grace's hand. You have a finance degree. I know, Grace said. But my daughter and my father depend on me. I need this job. The admin officer studied her for a moment, then quietly pulled a form from the drawer. Fill this out. Grace smiled for the first time that day. Later that afternoon, Ryan, working as Daniel, was mopping the back hallway when he noticed a new face among the cleaning staff. A young woman in a standard issue uniform, scrubbing the floor near the storeroom. Her technique was a little rough, the way it always is for someone who has not done this kind of work before. But she was not complaining. She was not looking around for someone to blame or pity. She was just working. George appeared at Ryan's elbow and said quietly, You see that new one? Ryan nodded. Came for the accountant job this morning. Missed it by 1/4 of an hour. He came back in and asked for a cleaning position instead. Said she would rather work than go home empty-handed. Ryan watched her for a moment, said nothing, but something in his chest shifted. A quiet recognition of something rare. Interesting, he said softly. George chuckled. Every day there is a new story in this place. I told you. Ryan kept watching Grace for just a moment longer. She had her head down and she was working. Just working. Like it was the only thing in the world that mattered right then. He turned back to his own hallway, but he did not forget her. That evening, Grace came home to her small apartment. Lily came running to the door before Grace had even finished turning the key. Mummy, you are back. Grace crouched and held her tight. Yes, baby, I am back. Edwin came from the kitchen, tea towel over his shoulder. He looked at her face. Did you get it? Grace straightened up. She paused just long enough for him to read her expression. Then she said, I got a job. He came forward. What job? She looked at him steadily. Cleaning. I missed the accountant position by minutes, but I could not come home with nothing, Dad. I just could not. Edwin put his hand on her face. Grace. He said her name like it was a complete sentence. The job does not define you. The fact that you went back inside. That defines you. She pressed her cheek into his hand for a moment. Then she straightened. I will keep applying. The accountant role will open again someday. And when it does, I will already be inside the building. Edwin smiled. That is my daughter. They sat together that evening with simple food and a warm kitchen and the sound of Lily's small voice asking questions about everything, the way children do, and Grace felt grateful for it. Deeply, quietly grateful. 2 days later, Grace arrived early for her shift and tied her headscarf firmly. Her back ached by mid-morning, but she kept going. She had learned quickly how to hold the mop properly, how to work from the far end of a corridor back toward the door, how to clean the skirting boards without bending her spine in half. Small things, practical things. She filed them away and kept moving. She was scrubbing the floor near the teller stations when she heard the heels. Vanessa came around the corner, flanked by two of her colleagues, Chloe and a woman named Diane. They were carrying cups of juice and talking over each other's voices. Chloe stopped and looked at Grace with exaggerated recognition. Wait, is that not the woman who came for the accountant interview? Diane peered at her. I think it is. Vanessa tilted her head. She looked Grace up and down slowly, the way a person does when they want to make sure you know they are doing it. You applied for accountant, Vanessa said, and got cleaner. She made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. That is quite a gap. Chloe covered her mouth, smiling. Diane added, I mean, no disrespect, but you might want to review your career plan, darling. They moved on, heels clicking, juice sipping. Grace kept scrubbing. Her jaw was tight, her eyes were hot, but she did not stop moving. Not one stroke of the scrubbing brush slowed down. A few minutes later, Ryan and George came through the corridor. Ryan had seen the exchange from the far end of the hallway. He had heard enough of it. He walked up. Are you all right? Grace looked up. The heat in her eyes was already cooling. She smiled briefly. I am fine. Those kinds of words stopped hurting me a long time ago. I have heard worse. Ryan sat down on the edge of the bench nearby. George settled beside him. Grace set down her brush and stretched her back slowly. She said, I went to school with a visible pregnancy. I sat exams while people looked at me like I was some kind of cautionary tale. I walked across the stage with a certificate and a photograph of a baby who was not 3 weeks old. Those women and their juice cups are not my worst day, believe me. George nodded slowly. Respect. Ryan looked at her. What is her name? Your daughter? Lily, Grace said. And her whole face changed when she said it. She just turned 4. Ryan smiled. She is lucky to have a mother who kept going. Grace shook her head. I am the lucky one. She is the reason I keep going. They sat in the quiet corridor for a while, the three of them, with nothing but honesty between them. Then Grace's phone rang. She picked it up quickly. Hello? A voice on the other end, urgent and frightened. Grace, it is me. It is Auntie B from next door. You need to come now. Lily is burning up. She has been sick twice and she is crying and she will not settle. I think she needs a hospital. You need to come right away. Grace was on her feet before the call finished. Oh no, no. Ryan stood immediately. What is it? My daughter. She is sick and I have no money right now. I get paid at the end of the week, but the hospital will need something at the door. She already had her bag in her hand. She was moving. I have to go. I have to go find a way. She ran. George and Ryan followed behind. Grace burst through into the main lobby. She went to the nearest teller window. Her eyes were red and her voice was shaking. Please, I work here. I am on the cleaning staff. My daughter is sick and I need an emergency advance. Just a small amount. I will sign anything. I will pay it back from my salary. I just need something for the hospital right now. Please. Vanessa was at the counter. She looked at Grace with flat eyes. Salary advances are not available until a staff member has completed 6 months of continuous employment. You have been here 2 days. There is nothing I can do, but she is sick. Grace pressed her hand flat on the counter. Please, she is 4 years old. Policy is policy, Chloe said, from behind Vanessa. We do not make exceptions. Diane added, you should have some savings for emergencies. That is basic financial planning. Grace stared at them. She could not speak. Ryan stepped forward. He placed himself at the counter beside Grace. She is a staff member of this bank. Her child is sick. Can you not find one moment of human decency between the three of you to help her? Vanessa turned slowly. And you are? Daniel. Cleaning staff, and apparently the only person in this section with a working conscience. Vanessa's eyes went cold. Cleaning staff have no standing here. Please step back. George moved up on Grace's other side. His voice was low and steady. That child could be seriously ill. You are going to stand there and tell me policy matters more than a sick 4-year-old, Vanessa pointed at him. You have been here even longer than this woman, and you still have not learned your place, George. George's eyes did not flinch. I know exactly my place. And right now, my place is standing here beside this young woman. Grace was still crying silently, one hand over her mouth. Then a door opened across the lobby. A tall measured man in a dark jacket came out and looked across the room. This was Mr. Fraser, the operations manager. He was known for being quiet and observant and making decisions with complete calm. He took in the scene at a glance. What is happening here? Vanessa moved forward. Sir, this cleaning staff member is requesting an advance against salary policy. We explained she is not eligible. Mr. Fraser looked at Grace. Your daughter? She is sick, sir. I need hospital money. I have nothing right now. Mr. Fraser walked to the desk, picked up a form, signed it, and held it out to the cashier. Process this. Emergency welfare provision. Sir, the policy, Vanessa began. I am aware of the policy. Mr. Fraser did not raise his voice. I am also aware that this woman is a member of our staff and her child is ill. Process it. The cashier processed it without another word. Mr. Fraser turned to Grace. Go. Take care of your daughter. The paperwork can wait. Grace took the money with shaking hands. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. She ran. George and Ryan watched her go. Ryan looked at Mr. Fraser and nodded once, with something deep and genuine in his eyes. Mr. Fraser gave a small nod back and returned to his office without ceremony. Vanessa turned to Chloe and Diane with a tight face. He has turned this place into a welfare center. Diane muttered, the owner will hear about this when he arrives. Vanessa crossed her arms. You can be sure of it. That evening, Ryan stepped into the back office where Marcus was waiting. He pulled off his cap and sat down. Marcus took one look at him. Bad day? They refused to help her, Ryan said. A child, 4 years old, running a fever, and 3 women in good uniforms stood there and quoted policy at a crying mother. Marcus was quiet. Ryan continued, but then Fraser stepped in. Without drama, without a speech, he just signed the form and told her to go. Marcus wrote something down. Fraser. He is the real thing, Ryan said. He did not need an audience. He did not need to perform. He just did what was right. Marcus looked up, and the woman. Grace? Ryan leaned back. She stood at that counter with everything against her, and she still had more dignity than every one of those tellers combined. She did not beg. She explained. She offered to sign. She offered to repay, and they laughed at her. He looked out the window, and then she ran. Not walked, ran, because her daughter needed her. Marcus said nothing for a moment. Then carefully, he said, You are talking about her differently than you have talked about anyone else. Ryan did not answer right away. He just looked out the window at the city. I have been in rooms full of people my whole life, he said finally. Rich rooms, boardrooms, dinner parties. And I never once felt someone's love for another person the way I felt Grace's love for that little girl today. That was real. That was completely, absolutely real. Marcus nodded slowly and closed his notepad. The next morning, Grace came in looking tired but steady. The hospital had treated Lily through the night, and by morning her temperature had come down. Grace had sat beside her daughter's bed without sleeping and arrived at work on time anyway, eyes a little sunken but chin up. Ryan found her in the corridor. Your daughter? She is better, Grace said with a long exhale. She is home with my dad. Temperature broke just before sunrise. Ryan let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Good. That is really good. Grace looked at him. She paused. You went to that counter yesterday. You said something when you did not have to. He shrugged. No, Grace said. People do not do that for strangers, especially not in places like this. She looked at him directly. Why did you? Ryan met her eyes. Saw it because it was the right thing to do, and because you reminded me that some people in this world still deserve to be stood up for. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You know, you speak like someone who has seen a lot, more than the average person your age. Maybe I have, he said. Not all of it has been easy. She looked at him with gentle curiosity. Are you a graduate? He smiled. Yes. Then do not settle for this forever, she said, and her voice had that quality it always carried, direct and kind at exactly the same time. Whatever happened to get you here, do not stop trying. I am a qualified accountant holding a scrubbing brush, but I am not finished. I am just taking the long way around. Do not you do the same. Ryan looked at her for a long time without speaking, and something happened in his chest that he did not have a word for. Something that felt like being truly seen for the first time in a long time. He nodded. I promise. 3 days later, Grace arrived at work with a container of food. Inside was a careful portion of jollof rice with fried plantain, made at home the evening before, while Lily sat on the kitchen counter watching and asking questions and stealing pieces of fried plantain when Grace turned her back. She found Ryan and George at the back of the building during the mid-morning break. "I made food," she said simply, placing the container on the low wall between them. "For yesterday, for standing with me, for being people." George looked inside and his face transformed. "This is real cooking. This is home cooking." Ryan laughed, the first real laugh he had allowed himself in days. He opened his portion and the smell alone did something to him. Rich, warm, spiced correctly. "Grace," he said, "you did not have to do this." "I know," she said. "That is why I wanted to." They ate together in the warmth of mid-morning, the three of them, with the city humming around the building and the sound of pigeons on the roof above. Afterwards, while George went back inside, Grace and Ryan sat talking. "You always seem calm," she said, "even when Vanessa is being horrible to you. Even yesterday at the counter, you do not react the way most people would." Ryan looked at his hands. "I used to react, loudly. It never helped." Grace nodded. "I used to cry," she said, "in the bathroom when nobody could see. I cried my way through 2 years of university with a baby and no money and people telling me I was wasting my time. And one day I realized the crying was not going anywhere, so I kept it, but I stopped letting it win." Ryan said, "You are one of the strongest people I've ever met." She looked at him sideways. "You do not know me well enough to say that yet." He smiled. "I am working on it." She smiled back, and it changed the whole corridor. 2 days after that, something happened that the staff of Crown Point Bank would talk about for a long time. An elderly gentleman came through the main doors in the late morning. He moved slowly with a walking stick, and he was holding a folded collection of receipts in his free hand. By the time he reached the teller counter, his face was pale and his hands were trembling. "Something is wrong with my account," he said to Vanessa. "There is money missing. I deposited my pension last week and now the balance is wrong." Worried, Vanessa glanced at her screen. "I am seeing the correct figures, sir." "These are not correct," the man said, pressing his receipts toward her. "I have all my slips here. The numbers do not match. Sir, if you cannot interpret your own statement, we have a brochure that explains how to read it." The old man's voice rose slightly. "I have been managing my own finances for 50 years. Something has gone wrong on your end, and I want it fixed." "I understand you are upset," Chloe said from the next window, with a smile that was not kind at all. "But we cannot make changes based on a feeling." The old man struck his walking stick on the floor once. "This is not a feeling. Something has been done wrong." Grace had come through from the storeroom to collect a supply tray, and she stopped when she heard the voice. She looked at the old man. She looked at the receipts in his shaking hands. She looked at the tellers doing nothing useful. She walked forward. Vanessa looked at her. "This is not your concern." Grace ignored her. She gently placed herself beside the elderly man. "Sir, my name is Grace. May I look at your slips?" He looked at her with tired eyes. "Yes, please." She took the receipts. She looked at them. Not quickly, not performatively. Carefully, the way she had been trained to look at documents. Her eyes moved between figures. She turned one slip over, looked at a reference code, looked at another. 30 seconds passed. She reached to the counter and borrowed a pen and a notepad that was sitting beside the keyboard. She wrote down 4 reference numbers. She circled 2 of them. She drew a simple column on the page with 3 rows. She turned to Vanessa. "Transaction reference 477 has been posted twice. The system has a duplicate entry, and deposit reference 21B was coded to the wrong account class. The gentleman's correct balance is this figure." She wrote it down and pushed the notepad across. "If you look at the entries for last Thursday, you will see both errors clearly." Vanessa stared at the notepad, then at the screen, then at the notepad again. Just then, Mr. Fraser walked through and stopped. He looked at the situation. He looked at the notepad. He looked at the screen himself. He said, "She is correct." He turned to his most senior teller. "Correct both entries. Run the reconciliation report. The gentleman's balance is to be restored immediately." Vanessa sat down quietly. The old man looked at Grace with eyes that had gone soft and watery. "Young lady, how did you do that so fast?" Grace folded her hands. "It is what I was trained to do, sir." He took her hand in both of his. God will bless you. A week later, the old man's son, a family law solicitor, came to the bank and asked to speak to someone in management. He told Mr. Fraser that his father had been shaken to the point of illness, that the tellers had dismissed him as though his account and his dignity meant nothing, and that it was a member of the cleaning staff who had found and fixed the error in under a minute. He said, "That young woman is a real professional, not the people in the expensive uniforms. Her." Mr. Fraser listened to every word and said thank you with complete seriousness. That evening in the staff corridors, the story had spread to every department. In the teller station, Vanessa sat with her arms folded and her face carefully blank. "It was one data entry error," she said flatly. "We would have caught it." Chloe said nothing. Diane said, "She is just angling for attention. She wants management to notice her." Vanessa looked at her reflection in the dark screen of her computer. She straightened her lanyard. "The owner arrives soon," she said. "When he does, things will get back to normal." Upstairs, Mr. Fraser knocked on Marcus's office door. "I have something to bring to your attention," he said, settling into the chair across the desk. "There is a member of the cleaning staff here. Her name is Grace Osei. She is a trained accountant. She came in to interview for the position we filled on opening day, arrived a few minutes late, and took a cleaning role rather than go home empty-handed. 2 days ago, she resolved a double posting error and a misclied deposit code in the teller station, in real time, in front of a distressed customer, faster than any of my tellers could manage." Marcus set down his pen. Mr. Fraser continued, "She has the qualifications. She has the instincts. She has the manner of someone who understands both the numbers and the people. I think she deserves considerably more than what she currently has." Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Fraser. I will look into it." The door closed. Marcus sat back. He picked up his phone and sent a message. It read, "It is time. She is everything you thought she was and more. Come back." That same afternoon, Ryan slipped into Marcus's office. He looked different, quieter, like someone who has reached the end of a long process of thinking. Marcus looked at him. "I was going to call you." "I know," Ryan said. "I have decided. I am done hiding." Marcus said nothing. He waited. Ryan stood at the window. "I have been here for weeks," he said. "I have seen cruelty dressed up in professional clothing. I have seen a man who has worked honestly for 30 years be treated like he does not exist. I have seen a woman hold her dignity together with both hands while people who know nothing about real hardship laugh at her. And I have seen a young mother run out of this building in tears to take care of her sick child because free tellers would rather hide behind a rulebook than act like human beings." He turned from the window. "And I have seen Mr. Fraser sign a form without making a speech about it, and George share a biscuit without expecting anything back. And Grace tell me not to give up on myself when she had every reason to give up on herself." He paused. "I have found what I came here to find. Not just one person, a few of them, but one in particular who I cannot stop thinking about." Marcus nodded quietly. "Let us do it properly," Ryan said. "I want you to announce that the owner is returning. Not suddenly. Give the staff a day to think about it. Let me see who they actually are when they are trying to impress someone versus when they are not. And then I will come in." Marcus smiled slowly. "You want them to sweat?" "I want the truth," Ryan said. "One more day of truth." The announcement went out that afternoon through the internal staff communication system and on the notice board in the main corridor. "Attention all staff. The owner of Crown Point Bank, Mr. Ryan Cole, Biz has officially returned to the country. He will be making an in-person visit to the bank in the very near future. All departments are asked to ensure their areas are at the highest standard of presentation and professionalism." The teller station erupted. Vanessa grabbed her phone from under the counter. "What? When did this happen?" Chloe immediately opened her camera to check her face. "I need to redo my makeup." Diane was already on her feet. "I am going home this evening and I am ironing everything I own." Derek from the floor above came down the stairs 2 at a time with a tie suddenly appearing from his jacket pocket. "Does this look straight?" Within 20 minutes, every surface that had been neglected for days was being furiously wiped. People who had been walking slowly were now walking with purpose. Voices that had been lazy and casual were now crisp and professional. People who had barely spoken to each other beyond the minimum required were now smiling warmly across corridors. George watched it all from the supply corridor with a long, slow shake of his head. Ryan found him there. George said, without looking up. They are very good at performing. Ryan leaned against the wall. They are. George looked at him. The owner is going to get a very nice version of this place. Ryan said. I hope not. George turned and looked at him with slightly narrowed eyes. Something in Ryan's voice had been different. He had noticed it before. Small things. The way Ryan looked at the building sometimes. The way his eyes moved across a room like he owned the problem. But George had said nothing. He was a man who had learned to wait for truth to announce itself. That evening, Grace and George were standing under the large tree near the side entrance, waiting for the late bus. Grace sighed. I wonder what the owner is like. George said, we will find out soon enough. Grace looked at the building. I just hope he is the kind of man who actually knows what happens in here. Some owners build something and then just collect the money. They have no idea what goes on inside, how staff treat each other, how customers get treated. They are too far away from it. George nodded. This could be a really good place, Grace said quietly, if the right person was watching, if someone actually cared. She paused. I hope he is kind, she said. That is all. Just kind. Ryan, standing close enough to hear, said nothing. He just looked at the side of her face, or at the way she said it, without drama or self-interest, just with the simple hope of someone who had been ground down enough times to know that leadership with kindness was rare and therefore worth hoping for. He turned away and looked at the building. He had built it. Every floor, every decision, every detail. And now he heard a woman who had been mopping its floors wish that its owner was kind. He was going to spend the rest of his life making sure she was right. 3 days passed, then 4. Then Ryan was gone. He did not show up to work. No message, no explanation. His locker had been cleared. Grace stood in the corridor on the first morning and looked at the space where he usually stood at 6:15 with his bucket. She looked at George. Has Daniel said anything to you? Did he tell you he was not coming in? George shook his head. Not a word. I have been worried too. He did not say anything to me, and we do not even have his phone number. Grace sighed deeply. Who knows if he is okay? How can someone just disappear like that without telling anyone? She lowered her voice, panic in her tone. What if those rude tellers report him to management? They might deduct his salary or even let him go, and he did not even ask us to cover for him. George frowned. It is strange. That man never missed work before. Maybe something is wrong with him. Grace nodded quickly. This is serious. 3 days is too long. We need to tell the management before someone else does. Just as they were talking, Vanessa came marching toward them, her high heels tapping loudly. Her face was firm. Where is that your friend? She looked at Grace, folding her arms. The owner can arrive any day now, and that cleaner has been absent for 3 days. She pointed a finger. You better call him. Tell him to return to work tomorrow or he may lose this job. Grace smiled weakly. Okay, I will. Vanessa hissed and walked away. Grace turned to George again, her worry now deeper than before. George, I think I need to go to management myself before that woman makes trouble. George nodded. Go, before she writes her long complaint. Just say something to protect him. Sarah nodded and walked away. Grace nodded. I was thinking the same. George pointed toward the main building. Go straight to the top floor. That is where the management offices are. Ask for Mr. Marcus. He handles most staff matters. Grace nodded and walked away. Later that day, Grace knocked gently on Marcus's office door. Come in, Marcus called out. She stepped in, hands folded in front of her, eyes a little nervous. Good afternoon, sir. Marcus looked up. Yes. How can I help you? My name is Grace. I am one of the cleaners in this bank. I came to speak about my colleague, Daniel. Marcus leaned forward, interested. He has not come to work for 3 days now, and we have no way of reaching him. I do not know if he is sick or something happened, but he has never missed work before. He is a good man. Please, sir, do not deduct his salary. I truly believe something is wrong. Marcus stared at her for a few seconds. He was silent, studying her face. Grace added softly, If you know anyone that can check on him, please do. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, Grace. I hear you. Do not worry. I will look into it personally. Grace smiled with relief. Thank you, sir. She turned and walked out. Marcus sat back, still thinking. Then he whispered to himself, Ryan is lucky to have found someone like her. Later that evening at Ryan's penthouse, Marcus stepped out of his car and rode the elevator up. Ryan opened the door himself, wearing a plain shirt and joggers. "Marcus, what is up?" Marcus chuckled. "I came to visit my billionaire cleaner." Ryan laughed. "I needed a few days to clear my head. I have been thinking a lot." Marcus walked in and sat down. "Well, while you have been thinking, someone has been worried sick about you." Ryan raised a brow. "Who?" Marcus smiled slowly. "Grace." Ryan blinked. "Grace?" "Yes. She came to my office today, said you have been missing at work for 3 days and that she does not have your number, but believes something is wrong. She asked me not to deduct your salary." Ryan sat down slowly. Marcus added, "She said you are a good man and that she is sure you would not disappear without a reason." Ryan looked away, his heart beating a little faster. He looked down, a small smile forming on his lips. Marcus continued, "That woman truly cares about you. It shows in her face, in her voice. That kind of care. You do not find it often." Ryan nodded slowly, still smiling. "I will see her soon." The big day had come. After weeks of pretending, hiding, watching, and waiting, Ryan Cole, the real owner of Crown Point Bank, was finally ready to show the world who he truly was. The bank was sparkling clean. That morning, the tellers stood neatly dressed, their faces full of expectation. The managers had lined up. Staff whispered from one corner to another. "The owner is coming today. I heard he is young and very wealthy. I just hope he does not let anyone go." Your Grace was at the back of the building, cleaning the windows quietly. She had no idea what was going on inside. She had not seen Daniel for days, and it made her heart heavy. Why did he leave like that, she thought. Inside the bank lobby, the elevator doors opened. Everyone turned. A tall, well-built man stepped out, dressed in a sharp black suit, sunglasses on his face. Behind him was Marcus, smiling proudly. Whispers filled the air. "Wait, is that him? I know that face. Is that Daniel?" George stood, eyes wide open. No, that is not possible." Ryan removed his glasses slowly. He walked with calm boldness through the crowd. Vanessa, Chloe, and Diane froze where they stood, mouths open like they had seen a ghost. Vanessa whispered, "Daniel is Ryan Cole." One teller almost lost her footing. George dropped the cloth in his hand, his mouth trembling. "I have been working beside a billionaire and did not know it." Ryan turned and smiled gently at him. "Thank you for being real, George." At the back, Grace turned when she heard her name called. She looked up and the rag fell from her hand. "Daniel," she said softly. He walked toward her. "No, not Daniel," he said gently. "My real name is Ryan Cole. I own this bank." Grace took a step back. "No, stop." Ryan stepped closer. "Please, let me explain." Her eyes filled with tears. "Explain what? That you lied to me? That you made me trust you while you hid your true self?" Ryan's voice broke slightly. "I only wanted someone who would love me for me, not my money. I did not mean to hurt you." Grace shook her head, a tear dropping down her cheek. "You lied to me, Ryan. You stood by me when my daughter was sick. You sat with me. You ate my food, and now I find out it was all a test?" "No, Grace. It was not a test. It was real. I was myself with you. Every word, every moment was real." Grace wiped her face. "I do not know who you are anymore. You say you are Ryan, but I only knew Daniel. And Daniel is gone." Ryan took a step closer, but Grace picked up her bag. "I am sorry, I cannot do this." And with one long look, she turned and walked away. The bank fell absolutely silent. Staff who had gathered stood completely still, watching. Vanessa could not even breathe. "She turned him down," Chloe whispered. "She walked away from a billionaire," Diane said, in disbelief. Marcus slowly walked to Ryan, who stood still, looking at where Grace had disappeared. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let her go, Ryan. She is in pain. But she will come around. She just needs time." Ryan's eyes were red. He did not say a word. He had everything money could buy, but now it felt like he had lost the one thing his heart had truly found. Back in the teller room, Vanessa sat on a chair, pale like someone who had just seen a ghost. She held her chest. "We mocked him. We insulted him. We spoke down to him every single day." Chloe paced around. "I told him he did not belong in this part of the building." Diane covered her face. "He heard us laugh at Grace. He watched us refuse her the advance." Vanessa looked at them, her voice shaking. "We are finished. That was the owner of this bank, and we treated him like he was nothing." In the manager's lounge, some managers also stood in shock. Derek, who had once made the comment about the cafeteria, was sweating. He heard that, someone whispered. He heard everything. Mr. Fraser, who had authorized Grace's advance, simply sat quietly at his desk. He was not shocked. He was not afraid. He had done the right thing when no one else would, and he had known it at the time. 2 hours later in the bank, Marcus stepped forward and spoke clearly. "All staff, please report to the main lobby. Mr. Ryan Cole, the owner, wishes to address everyone." They all came. Managers, tellers, cleaners, technicians, administrative staff. They stood in rows with careful faces and bowed heads. Ryan walked in. He wore a different jacket now, something traditional and clean. His eyes scanned every face. No smile, no performance. Silence. He stood at the front and spoke in a calm, deep voice. "When I decided to open this bank, I had a very specific idea of what it was for. Not just profit, not just market position. I wanted it to be a place where every person who walked through those doors and every person who worked inside them would be treated with full dignity. That was the vision." He paused. "What I saw when I walked in here in a grey uniform was something different. I saw people use the accident of a job title to decide who deserved kindness and who did not. I saw a mother beg for emergency money for her sick child and get quoted policy by people who had been employed for less time than she had. I saw staff make other staff feel ashamed for simply showing up to work." Vanessa bit her lip. Her hands were trembling. Ryan continued, "The purpose of this bank is not to wear a fine suit and walk with your nose in the air. It is to serve people, to help the vulnerable, to care for the community. If your heart is not in that, you have no business being here." A few tellers broke into quiet tears. "But some of you," he said, his voice softening, "shone like gold in the middle of all of that darkness." He looked at Mr. Fraser. "You acted with compassion when policy was being used as a weapon. You did not need applause. You just did what was right. From today, you are promoted to Deputy Director of Operations with full executive authority." The room applauded. Mr. Fraser bowed once, without drama. Ryan continued through the promotions, naming each person, speaking plainly about what they had done and why it mattered. Then he stopped. "And finally," he said. Everyone turned. Ryan looked at the empty space near the corridor where Grace usually stood. He cleared his throat. A young woman named Grace Osei came to this bank to apply for an accountant position. She missed it by 15 minutes and did not go home. She came back inside, took a cleaning job, and showed up every single day with more professionalism and more genuine skill than many people in this building with office doors and fancy titles. He paused. She resolved an account error in the lobby in real time that trained tellers missed. She held her dignity while people deliberately tried to take it from her. And when a colleague went missing, she came upstairs on her own time to make sure he was protected. His voice dropped slightly. "From today, Grace Osei is appointed Head of Customer Accounts at Crown Point Bank." The lobby filled with applause. Some of it was genuine. Some of it was the sound of shame trying to sound like admiration. Either way, it filled the room. Ryan looked at the empty corridor, but Grace was not there. He stood very still. Then he turned to Marcus and said quietly, "I need her address." Marcus had already written it down. 2 days after the announcement, Grace was at home. She had not eaten much. She had sat up late both nights with Lily asleep beside her, staring at the ceiling. Her father had said little. He had just made her tea and sat close and not pushed. Then their neighbor knocked and came in holding a phone like an offering. "Grace, it is all over the news." "Look." Grace sat up slowly. On the screen, a reporter stood outside Crown Point Bank. Behind her, the building gleamed. In a remarkable turn of events, at Crown Point Bank, the identity of the institution's billionaire owner, Ryan Cole, was revealed today following weeks working undercover as a member of the cleaning staff. In his official address, Cole promoted several individuals and announced that a woman named Grace Osei, a qualified accountant who had been working as a cleaner after narrowly missing the accountant role, has been appointed Head of Customer Accounts. Grace's hand covered her mouth. Her father came from the kitchen. He looked at the screen. He looked at his daughter. Then he sat down beside her and took her hand. "You did it," he said. "You walked in through the side door. But you got where you were going. Tears ran down her face. She let them. Ryan drove himself. No driver. Just him in his own car, the way he had always liked things when they mattered. He found the address. A clean, modest building. A small garden in front. He walked up and knocked. Edwin opened the door. He looked at Ryan. He did not say a word for a moment. Then he stepped back and let him in. Grace was on the couch. She looked up. Her eyes were still heavy from crying and not sleeping, but they were clear. Ryan stopped in the middle of the room. "I owe you an apology and an explanation," he said. "I know you may not want either right now, but I am here to give them anyway, because you deserve both." Grace was quiet. He sat down across from her, not beside her, giving her the space to choose. "I have spent years," he said, "surrounded by people who wanted something from me before they wanted me. I stopped trusting my own judgment about people a long time ago. So I built a test, and I know how that sounds when I say it out loud. I know it sounds like I reduced you to a subject in an experiment, and I am sorry for that. That was wrong." Grace looked at him. "But I need you to know," he said, "that nothing I said to you was performed. I was not playing a character with you. When I sat beside you in that corridor, I was just me. When I stood at that counter, I was just me. When I told you not to give up, I meant it from somewhere real. You are the most genuinely human person I have ever sat still with. And I know I have no right to ask you anything after the way this happened." He stopped. Grace looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I understand why you did it. I do not think you are a bad person. I think you were scared and lonely in a way that most people cannot see, because from the outside, your life looks complete." He nodded. "But next time," she said, and there was something in her voice that was both firm and warm at once. "Next time you want to know who someone really is, you could just ask. You might be surprised." He looked at her, and slowly, carefully, he smiled. Lily came running in from the back of the flat in her socks, completely unaware of the weight of the room, and crashed into Grace's side, demanding to know what was for dinner. Grace caught her and held her against her chest and looked at Ryan over the top of her daughter's head. He looked back, and Edwin, standing quietly in the doorway to the kitchen with a tea towel over his shoulder, looked at the two of them and nodded once, slowly, to himself. Weeks passed. Grace came back to Crown Point Bank. She came back in a different way this time. The corridor she walked down was the same marble corridor she had scrubbed. The lobby was the same lobby where she had watched an old man shake with fear over his pension. But she walked it now in a fitted jacket with her name on the door at the end of the hall. Head of Customer Accounts. And the tellers who passed her greeted her. Some genuinely, some with the careful stiffness of people learning a new respect. She greeted them all the same. One morning, Vanessa knocked on her office door. "Come in," Grace said. Vanessa stood in the doorway. She looked different, not broken, but quieter, like someone who had been through a long interior argument and finally stopped fighting. She said, "I came to say I am sorry." Grace looked at her. Vanessa continued, "I was unkind to you. I was unkind to a lot of people in this building, and I told myself it was professionalism, but it was not. It was arrogance. I saw what it looked like from the outside when someone was willing to stand at a counter for you while I stood behind the policy. I saw the difference." Grace let the silence sit for a moment. Then she said, "Sit down." Vanessa sat. Grace said, "I forgive you. Genuinely. I do not hold things. It costs too much, but I want you to take that apology and make it real by how you behave going forward. Not just to me, to everyone. To the next person who comes in late for an interview and needs a second chance. To the next mother who needs someone to be human first and procedural second." Vanessa nodded. Her eyes were slightly bright. "You are going to be all right here," Grace said, "if you choose to be." Chloe came the following day. Diane came after that. Derek from the floor above wrote a message and slid it under her door. Grace accepted each one, filed each one, moved forward. 1 month after Grace took her new role, Ryan called a full staff gathering in the large event space on the top floor. The whole bank was invited. Flowers were on the tables. The city was visible through every window. Ryan stood at the front with Marcus beside him. He began, "When I walked into this building as a cleaner, I thought I was looking for one thing, proof that real people still exist. People who are kind without an audience. People who work hard without applause. People who stand up when it would be much easier to walk past." He looked around the room. "I found more than I was looking for." Then he turned, and he looked at Grace. who was standing near the window in a deep green dress, holding Lily's hand. Lily was wearing small formal shoes and had been told to stand still, an instruction she was taking very seriously. "Grace," Ryan said. The room went quiet in a particular way. He walked to her. He said, "I know I went about this in a way that was complicated. I know I asked more of you than was fair without your knowledge, but I also know that you are the most real person I have ever met. And I know that what I feel is not about this building or this role or anything that can be put in a contract. It is about you, the actual you." He reached into his jacket pocket. He knelt down. Lily let out a small sound of pure delight and pressed her face against Grace's arm. Grace looked at the ring and then at him. He said, "Will you marry me?" Grace looked at him for a long, full moment. Then she looked at her daughter. Then she looked at her father, Edwin, who was standing at the edge of the room because Ryan had asked him to come and Edwin had dressed in his best jacket without asking any questions. Edwin nodded. Grace looked back at Ryan. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes." The room broke open with applause. Someone in the back cheered. George, standing near the door, clapped until his hands hurt and he did not care one bit. 2 months later, they married in a garden. Not a grand estate or a ballroom. A real garden, with trees and uneven ground and the sound of birds. Grace wore white. Lily wore white. Edwin cried openly, and nobody made him feel anything other than perfectly right to do so. Marcus gave a toast so long and so full of old friendship that Ryan had to physically take the glass from him to make him stop. And when the evening came and the lights were strung between the trees and Lily had fallen asleep in Edwin's arms and the last guest was standing and talking quietly, Ryan and Grace sat together under one of the older trees. He said, "I should have started at the beginning. Just asked you honestly," she said. "You found your way there eventually." He said, "I am sorry it cost you what it cost." She leaned her head against his shoulder. She said, "Every hard thing I have been through got me to where I was standing when you needed to find something real. So I do not regret any of it." He put his arm around her. The city hummed on in the distance. 3 months after the wedding, Ryan made one final announcement. He called the whole staff together on a regular Thursday morning in the main lobby. No flowers this time, just every department present and accounted for. He announced that Grace would be taking on the role of head of operations for the entire bank. Full executive authority, second only to Ryan himself. There was a moment of complete quiet, then the lobby filled with applause. Grace stood up and walked to the front. She was wearing her good jacket, and she looked like someone who had been walking toward this moment her entire life and had simply refused to stop. She took the microphone. She said, "I want every person in this building to hear this clearly. It does not matter what your job title says on your badge. It does not matter where you sit at lunch or what your uniform looks like or whether your name is on a door. Every person who walks into this building, to work here or to bank here, deserves to be treated with full human respect. Not most people. Not the people who look important. Every single person." She looked slowly around the room. "If you cannot do that," she said, "then you cannot work here. That is not a warning. That is simply how this place runs from today." The room was very still, and then, slowly, it began to clap. Ryan stood at the side of the room and watched her and felt something he had been searching for his entire adult life. The certainty of having found exactly the right person standing exactly where they were supposed to be. Grace looked across the room and met his eyes, and they smiled at each other the way only two people can smile when they have both completely earned the moment. Edwin was at home with Lily and they were perfectly fine. The city moved on around Crown Point Bank, loud and complicated and full of people trying and failing and trying again. And inside the building, something had changed. Not just the org chart, not just the nameplates on the doors. Something in the air, something in the way people greeted each other in the corridors. Something in the way a new employee was welcomed on their first day instead of judged and ranked. Something real. The end. If you are still watching, drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. If you are in the US, type US. Watching from the UK, type UK. Australia, type AUS. Norway, type Norway. Switzerland, type Switzerland. Denmark, type Denmark. Canada, type Canada. We genuinely want to know where our family is. Drop your country below and let us know you were here. And if this story reminded you that kindness is never wasted, no matter what uniform you are wearing when you give it, please share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one.